All righty. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the PWN Grassroots Fundraising Training. We're going to be recording this because we know that a number of folks aren't able to join us. We want to make sure that anyone who wants to learn a little bit more about fundraising, especially to get themselves to USCHA, has something to be able to go ahead and look at and to get some pointers. So feel free as we're going throughout the presentation today, go ahead and just stop me and let's talk about any questions you might have or points that you want to bring up. This is an opportunity for us to collectively come together and to talk about something that is critical and is also kind of sometimes a little challenging because it means that we need to think about why we want to go somewhere and ask people to help us raise money to be able to attend. So, hi everybody, Barb Cardell. I am PWN's Leadership Development and Training Director. I use they, them pronouns, and I am so glad to be here with my friends, and we're going to talk about fundraising today. I always call it fundraising because I always think it gives me a chance to talk to people. Maybe I know, maybe I don't know about PWN, which is an organization that I absolutely love and realize that I can talk about for hours and hours and hours. Usually I don't subject anyone to that, but just in case, it's there in my back pocket. Let's see here. So here's just a gentle reminder about PWN. I always like to include this slide. We have folks that are not as well versed in what PWN stands for. Gives us a chance to talk about why PWN is so special. We've been around since 2008. We are the only national membership body that lifts up the voices of cisgender and transgender women, gender diverse and transgender people who are living with HIV. We look at the HIV epidemic with a racial justice and a gender justice lens, knowing oftentimes that those that are most often seated at tables of power are not reflective of our community, not as informed about community needs. This is more important than ever when we talk about USCHA, which is the US Conference on HIV and AIDS, because we know that if we're not there at the conference asking questions, raising our hands, greeting people, welcoming people, that first off, people don't know about PWN. Second of all, a number of folks can feel really isolated. And finally, and one of the most important things is that if we're not speaking up, oftentimes the voices of people who are impacted by these programs and these projects and these budgets and these cuts are not actually part of the conversation. People talk about us without us being there, and that has never been acceptable. I actually love this last piece, and I included it in fundraising letters when I write fundraising letters, which is that our vision is that PWN is creating a world where all women, gender diverse and transgender people living with HIV can live long, healthy, and dignified lives free from stigma, discrimination, and criminalization. To me, that is just a brief overview of who we are and what we do. Yep, there's me. We've all introduced ourselves now. Good to see you. Logistics, we're just going to be on Zoom. We are recording, so if people want to go ahead and shut their video off or change their name, please do so. If you have a question, we are small and powerful. So just go ahead and raise your hand or pop off of mute and ask me a question if we've got clarification, and we'll just stop. Please go ahead and use *6 or the mute button to mute your phone because we're recording and we want to make sure that folks that are listening afterwards are able to hear us clearly, but it seems like we're not going to have a problem. The audio is pretty straightforward right now and fairly clear, so we're good. Want to start off the top of the conversation because we're talking about this being fundraising for USCHA. USCHA is a big conference, and it oftentimes has nearly 4,000 people that are there. Most of the people that are there are brought by their organizations. Some people have submitted scholarships and have been accepted. Some people fundraise and go on their own, and it's super important to have them there. We just want to be really clear about the cost of USCHA. So if you go ahead and you sign up and you pay for your registration, it is $710 if you register right now. PWN is a member. If you're not with a member organization, it's $835. If you are able to volunteer or come as a part of a program or a presenter, then your registration is paid for, but not these other pieces. We're in Washington, D.C. this time. Washington, D.C. is not cheap, not cheap. Hotel near the Marriott Marquis, which is where we're staying, run about $200 a night. So if you come in on the 3rd and you leave on the 7th, that is 4 nights lodging. That's about $800. Travel either by taking a flight or train can be about $500. You should probably budget about 92, maybe a little less if you're not a big eater or don't need a lot of other supplies like Cokes and things like that. But the per diem that is allowed for people, which gives you a good idea of how expensive it is $92 a day. So when you're thinking about going, you want to make sure that you're thinking about the food that you're going to need while you're there, as well as travel to the airport and to the hotel. And this doesn't include if you check a bag or anything else. So you can see it's actually quite expensive. Melanie.
For the hotel, they charge your a card an amount for incidentals,
Mm-hmm.
and they return it like 3 days after you leave if you didn't use it. But you have to have that available.
Yeah. One of the things that you can do ahead of time is that you can ask about having the phone and the other incidentals turned off, which means that they then don't charge your card.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you can do that.
It's one of the things that's good to do beforehand, but yeah, it is important if they're going to be charging the incidentals that you know how much that is. I always recommend, if people are checking into a hotel that they've not been to before, that they call the phone number and get the front desk and ask what they need to check in. Sometimes just a driver's license is fine. Sometimes you need 2 forms of ID. Sometimes you need a credit card. Sometimes a debit card is fine. Sometimes they charge it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you can ask them to turn off the incidentals like the phone and not stocking the minibar. And that means that they then won't charge, because we know that a number of our folks don't have credit cards or don't have that kind of deep amount on their debit card to have it drawn out and charged later on. And so I always call the hotel ahead of time, and every hotel is different, even within chains. And so you want to call and make sure that you have a sense of what that is. One other thing, is anyone here on a scholarship, not a 50+ scholarship, but a scholarship that was awarded to them from applying? Okay. If you talk to anyone who has been awarded a scholarship, it is really important that we make sure that they know that with the scholarship, and again, not the 50+ scholarships, you will receive a registration, a gift card, a small amount in a gift card for meals. I think it's $100. And 2 nights hotel. So what you want to do is, if you're staying with a scholarship, you want to make sure that you find someone else so that your 2 nights and their 2 nights can cover the whole conference. And means you have to share a room, but at $200 a pop, boy, I all of a sudden no longer need to have space to myself. That cost. I'm like, yep, the more the merrier. The more the merrier. So those are the costs of attending USCHA. As you can see, it's not inexpensive. It can be quite costly. So let's talk about how we can go ahead and raise. We're really looking at about anywhere between $2,500 and $3,000. It is. It can be expensive. Melanie, I just went ahead and put you on mute because it sounds like you've got some background noise there. So if you want to ask a question, just come off of mute. All right, so let's get into how we can get this money to get us there. So we're going to talk about grassroots fundraising, and grassroots fundraising is really fairly simple. It is when we, as either an individual or as a small group, go to our local community and we ask for money. A lot of times this is intimidating for people because you're talking to people that you know, either your neighbors or your church. But statistics have found that those are the people most likely to give you the money to be able to go to something like the U.S. Conference on AIDS. And so we call it the grassroots because the grass tops is sort of when you go and you talk to organizations and things like that. And right now, local aid service organizations and health departments, they're not doing so well. They're struggling. And so they likely are not going to be able to go. And so more often asking the people that are in your immediate area is going to be the most successful. Yeah, we can do it. We can do it. But it takes some work and it takes some planning. And so this is just literally the tip of the iceberg for us today. We're going to come on these calls every Tuesday, and we're going to have a workshop at the same time so that if people are fundraising and have questions or need help with a letter or ask somebody and got some money, all of that, we're going to be able to, as we go to USCHA, celebrate together about how we're doing for it, because I also am doing some fundraising to get myself there and to pay for some of the things that I need to do while I'm there. So this is going to be a journey we're going to take together. So there's no such thing as a stupid question. And this is a learning process for all of us. Kind of like how we do our abstracts and our scholarships, is that we all, we take the elephant. And if you look at the elephant, you say, my goodness, that is a large meal. But if you take a small bite at a time, it all of a sudden becomes manageable. So we're going to talk about where money is or where it might be. We'll talk about conversational skills. We'll talk about strategies you can use to engage people. We'll talk about a personal plan that helps you achieve the best outcomes. And we'll learn some new skills and share some ideas with everyone. And so again, as we're going along, if you've got a question or anything that you want to go ahead and bring up, please feel free to do so. So this always just stuns me. When we look at who donates, according to the charity pages, I think this is the registry for focusing on charities. The majority of donations come from individuals. We do not get a lot of our money from corporations. We don't get a lot of money from foundations. We get most of our money from individuals. And I would be curious, like if nonprofits were in there, or especially where churches were in there. Because sometimes churches, especially if they support HIV work or advocacy work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, though they can give you a small amount of money to be able to go, or a small scholarship, and they are good places to ask as well. The church themselves, not just people at the church, but the most of the money comes from individuals. And most of the money that is donated actually comes from folks that are in the middle class, lower middle class, and the poor working class, which I find really interesting, primarily because we know that first off, to ask for money is really hard. And that if we're asking for money, that it's something really important that we need to do, which I always find so interesting. So how do we get donations? We ask for it. And this is, really, really an interesting thing is that, 85% of the people who gave remember that they gave not because sort of they said, oh, I want to donate to PWN because they do such great work. They might know we do such great work, but they might think that we're totally fine or that our members don't need to actually go somewhere and do something. People give because they're asked to give. They're invited to give even, I would say, which is a good way to look at it, because then we know that we're inviting people rather than like begging for money, which is something that people kind of say sometimes and puts a negative twist on it. I always say, I'm inviting you to both support a really great opportunity for me to go to this conference, and to know that me being there representing women living with HIV is a really critical part of it. Many people don't remember the name of the organization they even donated to, but they do remember the person who asked them. And people will remember a little teeny bit about what you said. So you don't need to get you don't need to overwhelm people with facts. Most of the time, what people remember is how you make them feel. And so if you're saying, I have this really exciting opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., right now, is there any place that we don't need to be more than in Washington, D.C. right now? I can't think of it. So I can go and I can talk about how right now the budget cuts or these challenges where they're just messing around with everything at the federal level, how it is impacting my life in the life of people living with HIV in Colorado. I need to be there. Will you help me get there? And that kind of invitation is really tempting and gives people an opportunity to feel like they are supporting really critical work. So this is called making your case. And making your case is explaining to people, not just sort of like, oh, I want to go to Washington, D.C. because, my friends are going to be there, or because it seems like a cool thing to do. I need to be in Washington, D.C. so that the voices of people who are impacted by this ongoing mess are able to talk to people and to plan and to strategize together. So you talk about your organization, you talk about how you connect to PWN, you can talk about how you connect to other groups. And I think some of us here are part of the 50 plus category. So this USCHA is about HIV and aging. So you can say to your aid service organization, will you give me, even though you maybe don't have a lot of extra funding, will you help me give me $100 so that I can go and I'll come back and I will do a workshop or a training for your staff about what the most important things are that people brought up about HIV and aging, or to your medical clinic, or again to your church. So, what work are you doing and why does it help? That is so critical, especially around the HIV and aging. That's something we haven't been talking about for a really long time. And so it's an opportunity and an invitation. And so this is called making the case for why their donation will really help support incredibly important work that we're going to be doing. So just asking, it's not ever that easy. It's not ever that easy. It is, something that you want to be prepared for. Y'all have heard about the 1-minute elevator speech. This is something that you want to practice. And you want to make sure that it is specific to USCHA. You want to make sure that it's specific to Washington, D.C., the location. You want to talk about why it's this specific kind of conference. And you want to practice kind of tailoring your speech to people who maybe don't know a lot about HIV. So HIV, this is a really critical turning point right now. Current science means that we understand how to actually stop people acquiring HIV But unless we can talk about it, especially for people who are aging, we're not going to be able to change anything. That's why I need to go to Washington, D.C. to attend this conference, because it'll teach me both how to do that in a location that's going to be so important for them to hear our voices. So you can tailor it. That's somebody who doesn't know much about HIV. Someone who's really keen and knows about it, you can talk about the aging piece. You can talk about meaningful involvement in the voices of people who are living with HIV and why that's so critical. You can layer that on. I practice. So I'm in Colorado. It takes a while to get anywhere here. And so I practice in my car, kind of thinking of different ways that I would talk to people, yeah, about it. And I say it out loud because most people will write out something and will think that they've got it committed to their memory. And the way the mind works is that if you actually speak something, first off, you hear how it sounds to you, you hear where you get stuck, but it also helps you internalize it. So there's something about hearing your own voice talking about it that really helps you be prepared. Does anybody practice elevator speeches out loud to themselves? Melanie, you want to talk? You want to come off mute and share a little bit about what that's like and why?
I practice and I also write it down. And the reason I write it down is not to look at and read it, but I can look over and I write it down in bullet points. So I can glance over if to make sure I've covered everything I wanted to with that elected official or that person that asked the question. I have different elevator speeches for different things, uh, and I practice them regularly.
That's great. You know, I always thought elevator speeches were silly until I timed the one that went from the basement all the way up to the third floor in our Capitol in Colorado, in Denver. And it is 52 seconds. And I was like, okay, so I've got 52 seconds,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit more, but that's what I've got. And so I started timing myself to 52 seconds, because otherwise I always had something, one last piece I wanted to add that I didn't get in. And so by having that narrow sense is so important, in practicing it, writing it down, making sure that you don't end up like, oh, but one more thing, because you want to try and
The other
have it
thing that
polished. Yeah.
I practice is, testimony.
Mm.
They give you 2 minutes,
Hmm.
and testimony is different than elevator speeches because you want to put in your personal story that aligns with facts.
Yeah.
And so it is a little longer, but
Hmm.
practicing it, it makes it flow naturally, and people are compelled to listen.
Yeah. Thank you, Melanie. That's a great point. Wanda.
Um, am I off mute?
Hmm.
Oh, how nice. Anyway, um, as we know, I live in isolation, so I could practice my speeches till the cows come home. Um,
Hmm.
but I do it here at home, but also all the time that I spent in rehab, I tried to stay relevant. I was still doing stuff with the caucus. I was still doing stuff with PWN. I was still doing stuff with Nan, and you like you said, you need to get your words out. You need to be quick about it so that you don't lose the person that you are talking with, because their attention spans are very, very short. And so I've been really working on that and doing fairly well with it, because I can be long-winded.
Oh, honey, we all, when we have a lot that we're really passionate about, it is very easy to, stretch on, because we have all these really wonderful things we want to share. And so writing it out and then practicing gives us an opportunity to think about what's the most important piece that we want to make sure we include.
And
Absolutely.
learning to watch their micro expressions. Um, those are valuable talents that you all have helped us learn, and I try to really work on that.
That is great. That is great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for these great examples. So keys to our success are knowing our facts about our cause. You don't need to be the subject matter expert on all things HIV. You don't have to have all of the statistics, but some of them are pretty important. The number of people who are living with HIV in your state or the number of people who are impacted, I find always really matters. You can look that up. It's fairly easy to find if you don't know it, or you can reach out. We can help you kind of tailor both your elevator speech, but also if you need a little bit more information, we are here to help. You want to make sure, and this is not anything I'm worried about with anyone on this call. You want to make sure that your emotions, your intensity, your urgency, and your passion are communicated. I know for a fact that everyone who's here today is very passionate about advocating for the needs of women, cisgender, transgender, and people living with HIV. And so there is not any worry about the emotion. I have a couple of times gotten overly emotional when it sits with me how important this is, right? And I actually have never felt bad about that. I've apologized because sometimes I make the other person feel a little uncomfortable. But really, really saying to them, no, this is my life. This is the life of my friends. This is the well-being of my community. And I'll never apologize for getting emotional about wanting my friends and my community to live long, healthy lives. So
Well,
emotion, yeah.
I apologize, but this popped into my head when you said that. I believe it was AIDS Watch that we were at one year, and ONAP, I can't think of what his name was. He was before Harold. Um,
Douglas
anyway,
Brooks.
yes, Douglas Brooks. And she who has the might has the power. And
Hmm.
you were telling him truths that we could not determine, that he was relaying as per his job, to the White House.
Yeah.
You know, and but you kept them short and sweet.
Hmm. Yeah. No, we want to
It-
make sure that we are, not going down every alley, because our ultimate goal, and it's always this kind of thing, is like, keep in mind what your ultimate goal is. Your ultimate goal is to get people to understand why you need to be at USCHA and being willing to help support you to get there. So if you practice this and if you think about it, you're going to find yourself to be much more successful in doing asks. I always try out my asks on my family first, because I ask them for a lot of things, and if they're just meh, not engaged, then I know I need to go back and polish it up a little bit more. Why this is so important. But if they're there and they're like, oh yeah, that sounds so important, then I know that I've started to kind of get to my place. So find someone, and even if it's just us on this call, to practice and make sure that you're being really compelling, it's a good place to go. Okay, so fundraising strategies are, you can go ahead and create a fundraising letter if you want to go ahead and do that. You could also create a fundraising post that you're going to share on social media. If you're working on an elevator speech, you can go ahead and record it and go on TikTok or on your Facebook page. You want to make sure that you have a catchy campaign. So Wanda, so U equals U, or USCHA, where action meets advocacy. That's their official tagline. But Wanda, I was thinking about you wanting to raise money for your scooter, right?
Yes.
And like your tagline could be, Mobility. Nobody keeps Wanda in the corner.
That's right.
Or something like that, right? That gives us a chance to really kind of tell people quickly, like, this is about mobility, this is about engagement, and this is about being involved. So, hey B, welcome. We are in the midst of our training, and we have our recording on so that folks that aren't here to join us are able to go back and watch. We just talked about kind of being able to make a compelling case for why people want to go, how they need to go, and also have talked about a catchy campaign phrase, and how to use that as a part of your strategy. And then we talk about being prepared and being consistent. And so if you're going to call and ask people, or if you're going to post on Facebook, or if you're going to do any of those kinds of things, think about how you can go ahead and really be consistent about it. So there's been a couple of folks recently that have been raising money on TikTok for a down payment on a house. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but one of our PWN members has been doing that, and they are very intentionally on TikTok every single day, talking about a different thing in their life that would be improved or changed, or a dream, even every day, something different. And then they put the link in down below. That kind of consistency is what we're talking about.
I'm sorry, who is it so that I can
We're not
follow?
going to talk about who it is because we don't want
Okay.
to. Yeah, thank you though. Yeah, I'm intentionally being vague. So those are the fundraising strategies, but consistency and knowing what you want to do and having that be there is super important. All right, so strategies on social media. We're going to go through a couple of different ways that you can go ahead and reach out to people. Facebook, definitely posting a video, talking about the message, having a donation link. We'll talk about donation links later on. Instagram is always really popular because you can go ahead and do photos. TikTok with videos. You don't even have to be a TikTok maven. You can go ahead and do this, and you can, do at PWN, which then means that all of the algorithms will work and share with people who like our PWN stuff. Originally it was going ahead and sharing this on Twitter or the Bird, but now we're using Blue Sky. PWN is no longer on Twitter. And so it gives people a chance to do there. So the most important thing is to leverage your social media with your message. If you decide that you're going to campaign and fundraise to go to USCHA, you want to have that be a task that you dedicate some time to every single day, and that you really put the message out. And B, if you've got any questions, go ahead and just raise your hand. We're taking them as we go along. But otherwise, we're just going to keep poking along. We get some really exciting ideas further back in this presentation. Right now, we're talking about the traditional ones. If you do a fundraiser to benefit your attendance at USCHA, sometimes talking to the local media about it is really important, especially if you're going to US Conference on HIV and AIDS, because it's about aging. And so you can talk about why that's a compelling place for you to be. And oftentimes local news will be interested in either doing a small story or having you follow up with them. There are also other ways that people can go ahead and can support you without making a cash payment. People can frequent flyer miles. That works really well to get you to wherever you need to go. People can, if you have an Amazon list and you're looking for some stuff to raffle off, people can go ahead and donate something for you. Or give in-kind gifts if you're going to have an actual event. We're sort of balancing between the asking people and having a list and going through your list and asking people, or having a raffle, or having an event. I mean, these are all really, really good ways that you can decide that you want to engage and to do some fundraising ahead of USCHA. Here are some other ones. And so these actually, I left these graphics in. I changed the slides, but I left the graphics in because Ebony did this this training as a fundraiser for people who are trying to get to the summit, and we're raising money to get to the summit. But she did these amazing graphics that were so cute. And I looked closely at this one here. So one of the fundraising ideas is to have Barb Cardell's cookie mix. And I was just like, oh my God, that's so sweet. Birthday fundraisers, game nights. You can see that we've got benefit for PWN or all of the things going around. But these are really unique ways that you can go ahead and do it. So if you have a craft that you do, go ahead and make that and invite people to donate, and you can give them a bookmarker or a necklace or cookie mix. So if you're handy in the kitchen or you're crafty, think about what that looks like and do that. If you have a birthday coming up, you can ask people to donate. And you also can ask some local businesses for prizes and to host. Now, we're a little close to USCHA, and so a lot of these events are longer range strategies that you would use to get people to sponsor you maybe through the year. But we want to make sure you have them all so that just if something really sparks your excitement, you can go ahead and can think about what you might want to have. You can have a local business. So there's the dining out events. Those take a little bit of time because you have to go in and talk to the restaurant. We've done actual events where people have had, so it's if you make a nice meal, what you can do is you can say to people, like, if you donate $30 or $40, I'll make you a meal and I'll bring it over to your house, and you make a meal for 8 or 10 people and you go and you deliver it to folks. And that's one way to be able to fundraise, but you need to make sure that you take account the cost of the food. And so ask people to donate to a certain amount so that you can both pay for the food that you're making and also get some benefit from it. You can also, many people are now setting up in local arts and crafts areas, especially coffee shops, with small crafts that they've made as a way to fundraise there. So when we're talking about fundraising strategies, another one, and this works especially well with churches or nonprofits, aid service organization, is that you ask them if they'll do a match. And a match is just for every dollar you raise that they will then donate something else. And so, for example, I did this with my church way back when I was more active with them, and I, wanted to go to, actually it was a US conference on AIDS, but it was in Los Angeles in the late 80s, no, late mid 90s. And my church said, well, we'll match $1 for dollar up to $500. And so I worked really, really hard and I got the $500, and all of a sudden I had 1,000. And so a lot of these kinds of, matches, these are ways where people are not just kind of writing out a check, but where you say, I'm willing to work really, really hard to make this possible. And will you help reward if I am able to accomplish what I think that I can? Again, a few more statistics about people matching and that being a really compelling way for them to give. Public radio does this all of the time, and they find that when they have matches, dollar for dollar matches or any other kind of match, that they actually are pretty effective in their fundraising, more effective in their fundraising than just about anything else. Other ideas are yard sales and bake sales. You can see the list here. A 70s house party with people dancing, or you can do a walkathon, a dance-a-thon, kind of all of these sort of unique ideas. You can have, if you are a quilter, you can do a quilt. And so what is really helpful is to just go ahead and think about, what do you have? And it's really easy for us to say, well, I've got nothing that's really, really important. It could be something as simple as, I will go ahead and I will send a postcard to a family member who's maybe feeling lonely and isolated. every week for the next year if you donate $100, and that'll cover the postage and then also give me a little bit of a benefit. Just really unique things to do, because what do we have? We've got time, we've got our heart, we've got our compassion, and some of us are crafty, some of us are not. That's okay, we can figure it out. And we want to make sure that we are really not just using our folks that we know and believe are going to donate, but also reaching out to new donors and to new folks. A few more about special events. Pinterest is a great way to get ideas for parties. This was a holiday themed one, and you can see they had all of the things going. You know, you want to make your events fun and unique. A long time ago, I actually had a rubber chicken party. Oh, y'all are gonna love this. So you know the rubber chickens that you squeeze and they go like, what? Those ones? Yeah. And so I had a fundraiser where I went out and I bought a whole bunch of those rubber chickens, and they were like $1 each. I ordered them online and they were inexpensive. And we had a competition. So everybody came. It was a potluck, so I didn't have to do anything. But people would make a $50 donation, and they had their rubber chicken, and they had it for a week ahead of time, and they had to do something fun with it, and we had a contest. And whoever I know, it was the funny, I have not laughed that hard in a really long time. So basically people would come to the party, and it was a potluck, so we didn't have to provide food. But they had done something to the rubber chicken to make it some different kind of thing. So they had adapted the rubber chicken into something else. And so, you know, we had one person who came and they had the rubber chicken head as their earrings and the feet as the other pair of earrings. We had one person who had like cut it apart and jammed it into a candlestick holder so that the candle came out of the head. We had someone else who somehow or another shoved the rubber chicken all the way through a roll of toilet paper. And so they put it on a toilet paper holder. It was hysterical. The things that people came up with to do to their rubber chickens. And people loved it because they got to get creative, and they were fighting for the bragging rights about whoever was the most creative rubber chicken person. And then we had a rubber chicken that we literally had glued to a piece of wood and spray painted with gold. And it was the golden chicken, golden rubber chicken. And people fought for that award like you would not believe. Like you would not believe. So some of the most bizarre things you can think of actually can turn into really good fundraisers. You just need to be creative and have a little bit of fun with it, and be a little bit relaxed. Ebony did a 70s party where people actually dressed up in 70s clothes that they had gotten at Goodwill, and they had a competition. People love being a little bit competitive, we're just going to say. So these are all things that we can have and do that we don't take a lot of money for us to put on, but become really exciting, and people love the event and they love to be able to donate. So we talked about Pinterest being a good place to get some ideas. So here's the part that we're going to think about, is developing a personal plan. So for those of you who've not done fundraisers before, you know, you want to go ahead and think about what your goal is, how much money you want, and how you're going to accomplish it. Are you going to do a party? Are you going to do a bunch of small asks? Are you going to try and find a match? Are you going to make something, but you don't want to have to mail it? And so you'll say like, I actually will make cookies for the homeless shelter for once a week for the next year or next 6 months or the next month. And so if you want me to do that, then you need to go ahead and sponsor me for X number of dollars. And so sometimes people are like, I don't need any gifts, but what I would love to do is to make a donation so that somebody else can get the gift. And that is a pretty good way to be both generous and to help people. You want to make a list of the people and have a phone banking party with your friends or your family so that other people are doing this at the same time. And then the most important thing is to ask people to help you, because everybody can have a little bit of fun in the process and have a little bit of ownership. Like the number of people who donate to get someone to the International AIDS Conference that was in Rwanda this year. They felt like they actually had been a part of that. And that's powerful, regardless of where we're at. So a few things to think of is that it's important to make sure you thank people, especially if people are donating funds online to GoFundMe or to PayPal. You want to make sure that people know that you've received the funds and that you appreciate them. Because the great predictor of people donating again is if they have donated once. You want to make sure that you have a mailing list or a list of potential prospects for donating. Then you can work as an individual. Yep, make sure that you familiarize yourself with people, continue to answer any questions that they might have. Big piece about getting people to sponsor you is specifically say how you're using this money. So Wanda raised that she was hoping to raise money for a scooter. So that would be a very specific ask. I am raising money so that I can get to USCHA and do my volunteer work and the other things that I'm doing, and not wear myself out. That's really important. It's important not just for people who are aging, but folks that have some mobility challenges to be really present. I need some assistance for that. This is why I'm asking. That's so important. As specific as you can get. You don't need to be specific as like, I want you to give me, $5 so that I can go to McDonald's and have a hamburger with cheese as opposed to without cheese. That's a little bit too specific, but you want to be as specific around what you're going to use it for, because then people can start feeling like they're a part of your support team. People love to be needed and wanted. People always ask where to have funds donated. And so here's the straight up truth. It is much easier to develop a GoFundMe page or to have people make payments to your PayPal account rather than them come to PWN. If people must donate to an organization, we can figure out how to make that happen. So sometimes churches must, or nonprofits, so ASOs must donate to an organization. We can figure out how to make that happen. But PWN has a fiscal sponsor. And so there will be at least a 10% charge for any money that we bring in that we then would disperse to you. So it is much easier for you to go ahead and use a GoFundMe or a PayPal account, however people feel comfortable. If they write checks, whatever, that's an important thing is what people feel comfortable with. You make sure that you send thank yous as you receive the funds to acknowledge it so that people aren't worried that it's like stuck in limbo somewhere. And most important is that you tell people if you aren't able to raise all the funds to attend the U.S. Conference on HIV and AIDS, what do you do? Do you give the money back to them, less sort of the percent that these sites take? Do you tell them that you're going to hold it for AIDS Watch next year or the next conference that you want to attend? Do you say that you're going to donate it to the local AIDS service organization? Because the cost to get to USCHA is so high, there was a chance that you're not going to be able to raise all the funds. And so I always go into it with, if I'm not able to attend because I wasn't able to raise enough, I will do this with it so that people know that you are thinking responsibly about what you're donating. And there's my contact information. And that is what we've got there. So, who's got questions, thoughts, or comments?
That was awesome.
Oh, good. Thank you. Well, we will share the slides and we'll share the recording with you all so that you can go back and watch it. And like I said, every Tuesday, 6 o'clock Eastern time, we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and we're going to work through whatever challenges people are having. If you've got a fundraising letter, if you want to practice your elevator speech, all of it. Okay. So we're going to keep workshopping what we're doing. It'll be the same Zoom link, and you all can just put it in your calendars or not. So how are y'all feeling? Are you feeling a little bit better about fundraising, a little less intimidated by it? Thanks, Miss Green. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's I just remind myself time and time again that when I'm fundraising, that I'm giving people an invitation to be a part of a really cool opportunity, a really cool organization, a really cool event, all of those. It's an invitation to be part. Yeah. Oh, there's been a lot of PWN meetings. So I'm glad you made it. Yeah, we had our PWN membership call. And then it moved from Friday to Thursday because we're closed on Fridays, but this is the fundraising to get people to USCHA. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to stop our recording. And invite us to take a minute or two to ask any questions, but they won't be in our recording. So thank you all for joining.